Dealing with mammon and serving God. There are really only two ways of service for mankind. Either a person serves God or serves mammon. Probably 80% of the Christians in the world are serving mammon, and perhaps 18% are serving mammon as well as serving God. It is extremely difficult to find a few who serve God exclusively. Formerly, we avoided mentioning money and wealth. This was due on the one hand to our unfaithfulness and to the difficulty of talking about it on the other. As was intimated before, money is itself unrighteous. Christians will obviously not be serving God if they should earn money by illegal or unrighteous means, yet even earning money in righteous ways may not be serving God. For the Christian, profiteering itself is illegitimate. Unless one has settled this critical issue in his Christian life, there shall be many unresolved problems. As we pointed out earlier, out of one origin God had created all things, but God's enemy has used money to reunite all things into one. God made all things, but money can buy all things. Any thought of profiteering, if carried out, is therefore in the service of mammon. Biblically acceptable occupations. All legitimate occupations seek gains from nature, not from people. For example, suppose there are 2 billion people in the world, and each one has $1 in his or her pocket and nothing more elsewhere. The total amount of money in the world is therefore $2 billion. To increase the money in my pocket, I must take it from the pockets of other people. How can a Christian take money out of others' pockets and put it into his own pocket? Is it not beneath the dignity of a child of God? Hence, what we must do is to increase the value of nature. All the occupations of God's people cited in the Bible are related to nature. Fishing, for instance, is taking in the produce of the sea. Farming is taking in the produce of the land. Such professions may increase my money without lessening another's. We may increase our own money, but we should not decrease another's. The increase of Abraham's and Isaac's herds and flocks was God's blessing upon his servants, but the increase of Jacob's herds and flocks was stealthily gained at Laban's expense. Abraham's increase was right, while Jacob's increase was wrong, for the latter sinned against Laban in such activity. Today, many there be who are like Jacob. How can we serve our God well if we have not settled this issue? The king of Tyre mentioned in Ezekiel 28 points to Satan. He fell by the abundance of his traffic, and traffic there has reference to pure commerce. Ezekiel 27 and 28 marks the earliest commerce, while Revelation 18 marks the last. Ezekiel 27 to 28 is the beginning of world commerce, whereas Revelation 18 represents its conclusion, with its prominent mention of the merchants of the earth. At the end time, the Antichrist will do business through Babylon. Pure commerce represents more than a matter of acquiring or earning money. There is also the issue about it as to just how money is actually acquired. Today we cannot but pay attention to the matter of how money is gained. We may increase our own, but we should not cause society to suffer loss. Refining iron and transforming it into steel, for instance, gives increase to society. Such an occupation is acceptable. Today our thoughts need to be disciplined by God. The profiteers see nothing else but money. They look not at how many fishes they have, but only at how much money they can acquire. The Jews were originally occupied in farming, pasturing, and laboring, for in Old Testament times God had distributed land to the children of Israel that each might work on his own land. Here the Jews learned a lesson. But after their fall and dispersion, they have become some of the biggest merchants in the world. This becomes a stronghold that is very hard to break through, since pure commerce is such a great temptation. How we all need to do an about-face in regard to it. May God transform our thought. Unrighteous steward and unrighteous mammon. Luke 16 speaks of the unrighteous steward and unrighteous mammon or money. Here the master commends the steward for his cleverness in using his master's money to make friends for himself. This parable can be divided into two parts, the story itself, followed by the teaching deduced. Verses 1 to 7 tell the story. From verse 8 onward is the teaching. The sons of this world are for their own generation wiser than the sons of the light. For the unrighteous steward changes 100 measures of oil to 50 and 100 measures of wheat to 80. Such economic activities are unrighteous in their procedure. They naturally are to be condemned. But in the following verses we see that the Lord calls us to save people to the eternal tabernacle by means of the mammon or money of unrighteousness. The mammon itself as well as its procedure are all unrighteous. Hence, the story itself speaks of the unrighteous procedure, whereas the teaching part tells of the unrighteous mammon. The story does not refer to the oil or the wheat as being unrighteous. It declares from the outset that the man is unrighteous. He is called by the Lord an unrighteous steward. Yet in the teaching, even money is labeled as being unrighteous. Jesus termed it the mammon of unrighteousness or unrighteous money. On the basis of this passage, some deem money to be right because it is said that money can be used to make friends and send people to the eternal tabernacle. But we need to understand that before God, the very nature of money is unrighteous. We need to repent of our concept of money. For God and money stand opposite to each other. How can we allow anything to stand in opposition to God? So we serve either God or mammon. Mammon desires men's worship as much as God desires men's worship. Let us therefore have this issue of money resolved in our Christian lives, and if so, then we shall discover that the way to serve God is made easy. When the children of Israel came out of Egypt, they were given permission by the Egyptians to remove the latter's gold, silver, and jewelry, and the more they took out, the better. If today the money we have comes by way of righteous means, we can take more. But if it is obtained by unrighteous means, it needs to be returned. Yet some will find it difficult to let go once the money is in their hands. Nevertheless, let us preserve the dignity of our being Christians.